Welcome to Detachment 538's Air Force ROTC first podcast episode. My name is Cadet Joseph Harklerode, soon to be Public Affairs Officer in May of 2021. The purpose of this podcast is to expand Detachment 538's outreach while sharing our story along the way. We aim to connect with the Air Force community as a whole, as well as people interested in the Air Force and our ROTC program. Today I have the privilege of sitting down with Lieutenant Colonel Jason Turner, the commander of Detachment 538. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Lieutenant Colonel Turner commissioned from the Air Force ROTC program in 1999 from RPI. As a fighter pilot and trainer, Lieutenant Colonel Turner has held a variety of assignments as an F-15 pilot, serving at bases in the U.S., Japan, and as part of NATO alliance programs. He has also earned the title of a political military affairs strategist. He was promoted to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in 2014. So I got to say, I'm excited to get started. So let's get right down into some topics and questions.
You bet.
Sir, from the late 90s to now, how has ROTC changed since you've been in the program?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, if you to take it all the way back to my experience, I graduated back in 1999 from Rensselaer, and Detachment 550 still has I think back on it, my experience there very fondly. And a matter of fact, it was my experience there in Detachment 550 that made me want to come back to the ROTC environment later in my career, because it was something that I enjoyed, it was something that I respected, and I thought I could take some of the experiences that I've had over the last 20-some years and bring them back to the next generation. There's a lot of things that are the same. And there's probably more things over the years that are the same, you know, from the marching and the inspections and the drill, the Arnold Air Society and Silver Wings and the importance of those organizations. Those haven't changed a whole lot. What I'm seeing that's different and new and exciting is the caliber of cadets that are going through this program, I think, is only continuing to increase. You know, one of the things that amazes me about Detachment 538 is naturally I compare the cadets that we serve to how I was as a cadet back in the late 90s, you know, and I'm always impressed with the academic skill that our cadets bring, the attention to detail, the energy. I mean, we just saw it this morning in LLAB, the energy that this cadet wing can bring. I think that's and it's not that we weren't doing it right in the 90s, it's just folks are so much more focused on what right looks like. And we've, at 538, have gotten really good at building hey, this is how we act, this is what our culture is, this is how we train, this is what we value. And I see that from everything from the brand new freshman AS100s to my seniors who are in those leadership positions driving that home. There's other small differences in the program. I mean, there's administrative nuances of how scholarships are divvied out and how much funding the program has. And I remember when I went through, there was a full bird colonel at RPI, and it's not anymore. So the cadre interactions, I think, have changed over the years. But I think that ebbs and flows based off of personalities of the cadres and the cadets as much as the program itself.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Just a few things.
Yes, sir. You mentioned, students and academics. So what are some of the challenges in leading college students striving to earn a spot as future officers in the Air and Space Force now?
So in a technical school like RIT or RPI, you get people with a variety of backgrounds and majors. There's everything from the highly technical, like electrical engineering, computer science, to folks with non-technical degrees, whether it's business or criminal justice. But we're all here, regardless of those backgrounds in academics, we're all here for that same overall goal, right?
Yes, sir.
Which is that commission. You're striving for those second lieutenant bars because it unlocks a career that I think we're all excited about. Most people who are getting into the military, they know that if you're getting into the military, you're probably not doing it for the money. The money's good, the compensation's fair, but you're not going to get rich from the work that you're doing in the military. It's the jobs, it's the mission, it's the people that you're going to interact with that you get excited about, that we're fired up for. So when it comes to lead those academics, I think one of the things that we need to be cognizant of is to make that vision of what's next tangible, you know? What is it like to be an officer? What are the skills that will make you a successful officer? And we generalize those because I need to build a person who's as effective as a public affairs officer as would be a pilot, as would be a cyber officer, as would be a space operations officer. There's some core fundamental leadership, teamwork skills that we're trying to develop. And that's what I see this detachment doing so well at developing.
Yes, sir, of course. And, I imagine leading college students has to be different in some ways and similar in some ways than leading active duty airmen and pilots like yourself. Do you see those similarities and differences, and did you adjust your style?
I think leadership is leadership, and when you've got inspired people, the core tenets of that are fairly common, There are some advantages to being on a college campus, and when it comes to identity and what do we see ourselves as, we see ourselves as RIT Tigers, or we see ourselves as Det 538 Blue Tigers, if you're from a crosstown school like you are. Oftentimes, rallying people around a shared identity really helps in terms of getting motivation, group values, group culture together. And I think that the Blue Tigers have done a really good job of rallying around that Blue Tiger identity. That's one thing that you can do on a college campus at a ROTC detachment, that you substitute in that identity to what you'd have in the active duty military, which is your unit's identity. Whether I was the Dragons of the 33rd Flying Training Squadron as a first assignment instructor, you'd kind of rally around that, and then you build your culture around that. Since we don't have a mission set to build around, we build on the vision of what it is to be an officer as the focal point. So the how we do it doesn't change much. The mechanics of it might change slightly, and the messaging might change slightly.
Yes, sir. And with the rollout of the Air Force ROTC program, now commissioning Space Force officers, I could see that concept being very similar. Leadership is leadership. Those fundamental skills that a leader possesses, they're very capable to do an array of different things. So that's a good point, sir. My next question, I kind of want to shift gears now, sir. So you implemented 2 virtual reality flight simulators in our detachment fairly recently. What does it mean to have those available for use to our cadets?
Well, the Chief of Staff says accelerate change or lose, right? Bringing virtual reality into a detachment is just one more tool that we can use to build the concept of innovation within our detachment. And whether that innovation goes to teaching people some basic flying skills, or whether it shows someone who's never going to be an aviator a little bit of, hey, how does the world look like at 10,000 feet and 300 knots, and recognizing that that's one of the mechanisms that we deliver effects for the Air Force, right?
Yes, sir.
It provides a little bit of that perspective. I think it's also great for recruiting, I see those devices, and I talk to my compatriots about, hey, what does it bring? And for me, if I had had this tool back when I was a cadet, I don't think you could have gotten me off of these. I would have been here on the weekends. I'd had a cot set up in the spare room so that I could maximize my time in that, just because I value that experience. So in my mind, there's value to having them in the detachment for an attracting people into your organization that find that interesting. And it doesn't have to be just flying training. I think virtual reality has a ton of possible utilizations, whether it's as a mechanic using artificial reality to augment your checklist procedures or your maintenance of an engine. I think there's ways that we can use those tools to do those things. But really, part of this goes to some of my experience back at Shepherd Air Force Base when we were trying to support and augment pilot training next, which is a developmental effort by 19th Air Force to change the way, not necessarily change the way we train pilots, but to try and do it better, more effectively, less expensive, and over a smaller period of time, so that we can train more pilots. Because we're at a deficit of pilots in the Air Force. So that we're at a gap of over 2,000 pilots, and that gap is getting bigger because our pipeline isn't big enough to cover it. So the idea is if I can use those virtual reality training tools to either teach or practice some of the skills that we would naturally do in the aircraft, you're saving time and money at scale. Now the question becomes, okay, if I can use those tools at undergraduate pilot training, could I use them earlier? Could I bring it into the ROTC environment or the academy environment and download a syllabus, download training, and actually get people spun up all the more quickly and getting familiar with these tools, using these tools to learn skills like basic navigation, checklist usage, communications. How do I fly a traffic pattern? How do I go through the procedures to land a plane, even if I don't maybe have the perfect feel for how to land it? All of those things translate themselves well to making a pilot faster. The other thing is these tools give us a great idea to test how effective are you going to be as a pilot. Right now, the tools that the Air Force uses to select a pilot are very much the same as they were 30, 40 years ago, where you take a test, you get a number score on your test based off of how well you read gauges and read a compass and see an aircraft in a three-dimensional space, and you write, it's C, D, A, E. You fill out the sheet, and it gives you back a score. They take that, plus how you score on the TBAS test, which is a hand-eye skill coordination. Can I memorize a number while typing in something while working on a rudder pedal? It's not a great way of testing a person's actual skill in the aircraft. It has value, but could we modernize some of those pilot selection criteria to something that's relevant to actual flight? When the TBAS was created, we didn't have the ability to create a realistic simulation. We do now. And now having this device in 538 gives us an opportunity to maybe be a test bed for some of those other selection mechanisms. What's that mean for our cadets? Well, hopefully it makes our cadets more competitive when it comes time to compete for rated slots.
Right, and we talk about this idea all the time of building well-rounded officers and well-rounded leaders. And you mentioned, to your point before, that anyone, not just pilots, should get a chance up in the virtual reality to see that view from, the aerial view from above. Why is that the case? Like if someone is going into security forces or cyber operations, why should they see that view?
Well, one thing that I kind of recollect in my active duty career is my job as a pilot, I'd wear a flight suit on base and I would go to the non-flying side of base. There's always a flight line side of base where the operation's taking place. And there's usually a support side of the base. And it was always strange to me. It seemed foreign to me, just given how passionate I was about aviation, that there was another side of the base where you'd ask them, hey, what aircraft do we fly here? And most people could answer that question. We fly F-15s and KC-135s, and we have E-3 AWACS, and we have HH-60 rescue choppers. Great. There's some people that are like, I don't even know what that plane's called as they point up in the air and see one flies by. I think if you're an Air Force officer or a Space Force officer, you need to know about the systems that deliver the effects that it's your business to do. And wherever you're at, whether you're in the cockpit flying or whether you're the security forces person guarding the gate or being the person who has to sit the long hours overnight to guard that aircraft, or someone who's the physician who's providing medical care for the whole team that's supporting that, or the maintainer that's turning the wrench on. All of those people need to understand, in my mind, what the effects are that can be delivered from the aircraft that fly the mission out of this base, because it goes to their ability. Can I speak to what the Air Force's mission is? Can I be an advocate for air power? Can I be an advocate for these effects? I think giving people that experience of what it's like to sit in a cockpit gives them a little bit better perspective to be able to have that conversation, whether it's as a public affairs officer or whether it's as a pilot.
Yes, sir. I want to move on to our next topic here. And, I sometimes hear from active duty officers, like new lieutenants, and they say something like they had no idea, what the career was that they got selected to. And they really had no idea about it coming in. Something that we have implemented here at Detachment 538 is we've hosted and participated in 2 career days with detachments and presenters from around the Northeast region of the country. Why does giving cadets more information about potential career opportunities, what does it mean to you as the deck commander to give those cadets those opportunities?
That's a great question. In my mind, if someone knows what they're getting into, it does two things. One, it gets people fired up about it, because once you know what it is that you're going to go do, you start studying it and you start learning all of the good things about it, because there's great things to every assignment in every career field in the United States Air Force. There's also probably some things that aren't so great about it, but when you learn about it and you recognize it, then you get excited for it. And all of a sudden, you have a career field assigned to you, and now you become that. I become a contractor. I become a logistician. I become a pilot. And that becomes part of your identity, and it's cool. And you get excited about it, and you learn about it, and you can start articulating it. So the sooner that someone can start learning, hey, I'm interested in this career, they can start building that research, which starts building that passion, which once they do get selected, it's like, I'm already excited because I know what it is that I'm getting into.
Right.
The other piece that goes into it is, I think it's important for people to see the breadth of career options that are available. I think once you do go into your career field, it's important for you to know and understand what the other career fields are that provide supporting roles. So by having these career days where we bring people in and talk through their careers, I think it helps people be wise about the other opportunities that are available, and also it provides an element of respect and appreciation for all of the support that goes into getting the mission done. There's some people who develop in a stovepipe, and pilots are notorious for developing in this stovepipe where they have less experience leading, less experience dealing with a diverse mission set. And it's a disservice to our leaders. Knowing more about some of these other career options, I think, is kind of a key part of what we should be doing in a detachment to prepare young officers, regardless of where it is they're actually going to end up.
Absolutely. And, what would you say to a cadet that has recently received their career option? There are 400 right now, and, it wasn't on their top 5 list. What advice would you give them going forward?
So the first thing is, once you know what it is that you're going to go do, and I'll be the first person to say, I rarely got my first choice of a base, my first choice of an assignment. I mean, I was fortunate that I got selected to be a pilot. You go back and you look at class of 99 at RPI, I was probably like the last person to get a slot. I was fortunate on that go-around. Some people may not get their first choice. You need to understand, and I think it's important for people entering this program, when you enter, you're entering to become an officer. You're not entering to become a pilot. You're not entering to become an electrical engineer for the Air Force. And it may be that the Air Force needs your talent set in a different area than what your degree is aligned with. Maybe what your first choice or even second or third choice is aligned with. The thing is the Air Force knows that by going through this program, you will have developed a set of skills that can make you effective in something, really of the breadth of opportunities that are out there. There's some jobs that require certain degrees to be in, but once you're placed in a career field, it's the Air Force saying, we think you're going to be successful in this. Okay, maybe it wasn't what you thought. Now's the time to go and research. Right? It's to find a mentor within that career field. And your cadre should be able to help set you up with someone who's knowledgeable. Even if there's not someone in the cadre that has direct experience, we probably know someone who does. So learn about the good things and the bad things. Learn about where the opportunities are in the career field. Learn what skills are valued. Learn what will make you effective in your first assignment. Learn about the places you can go so you can make a smart decision on where's my base of preference. And once you find out, hey, I know I'm going to be a public affairs officer at Tyndall Air Force Base, just that knowledge allows that person to go and do the research and find out, hey, there's a lot of great things about that location. There's a lot of great things about that mission set, and you become knowledgeable. And that plus a mentor who knows how to translate that into success in the career field is ultimately going to be what gives that cadet who maybe didn't get their first choice opportunities so that they can make the experience valuable and rewarding for themselves, and maybe steer the ship later down the road if they're looking to make a change or adjustment in that game plan.
Yes, sir. And just like in any organization or business, everyone has a different role and a different contributing factor to accomplish the mission. For example, you had a flight crew prep your F-15s for you. I, as a public affairs officer, will help the base commander. Security forces. Without security forces, the base isn't secured. So, that idea of that everyone has a contributing factor to the mission, I think, would help those people seeking that advice.
I agree 100%. Everybody's valuable on this team, and really our most precious resources are people. We can't, there's no waste, right? There's no jobs that aren't important. There's no responsibilities that aren't valuable overall. And that's one of the great things about once you say, hey, I want to be a part of Air Force ROTC, you know that you have a guaranteed job, provided you're successful through the program, and you know that job is going to have value. You know you're going to be able to look at the American flag and hear the Star Spangled Banner, whether it plays at your base or it plays at the ball game. You're like, I'm a part of that. And there's pride that comes with it. And there's so much career satisfaction that can come from that, that there's value regardless of the job that you're performing.
Absolutely, sir. One of the last, big picture questions that I have for you is from here, you're almost down 2 years at Detachment 538. What's the direction you'd like to see the detachment go from here?
Well, I think one of the things that we look to do is build a culture where we're supportive of the team. And I think 538 and the Blue Tigers have always been well known for having a strong, collaborative, supportive culture. The idea is to put the pillars in that's going to allow that foundation of culture to succeed beyond your tenure, right? There's a saying, we will never enjoy the shade of the seeds that we're planting today. We're planting trees. These trees are going to grow, and over 10, 20 years' time, it's going to become something wonderful and magnificent. We won't be able to see that as we're doing it. I'm hoping that you, me, we're all building that legacy of 10 years from now, 20 years from now. People recognize if I go to ROTC at Det 538, it's going to position me to be successful as an officer in the Space Force or the Air Force. I want people to see unique value coming from their experience here at 538. I want to make sure that we're developing and deploying experiential learning opportunities, whether it's getting out and seeing a base, whether it's going to field training and maximizing your performance there, whether it's learning a key language skill that's going to be relevant strategically on the backside. I want people to recognize that if you come to Detachment 538, you're going to have the opportunity to pursue all of those great experiences that in summation translate to a rewarding, successful officer career. If we look to, hey, what do we do beyond our time? I'd really love to see the culture continue to build to be we develop successful officers. The other piece of the culture that I strongly value is that if you raise your hand and say, I want to be a part of this organization, for that high school senior that's thinking about, hey, do I want to come here? I want them to know that once they make a commitment to us, that we're reciprocally making a commitment to them, that as long as they adhere to the standards, meet the standards, give their best effort, and try and really dedicate themselves to this objective, that as long as they're on pace with their part of that commitment, we are going to meet or exceed their level of effort to get them across the finish line. Those are the kind of things that I think we've worked hard in the last couple of years to expand upon. It's not that they weren't there 2 years ago. They were there all the time. It's, hey, how can I make it a little bit better? How can I make it a little bit more welcoming? How can I make it a little bit more tangible about how is marching at 6:15 in the morning relate to flying in formation of F-15s? Just today, this morning, I saw someone call a column left, and they meant column right. And they quickly got themselves out of that problem. They fixed it, immediately. It was great. It couldn't help but remind me of a time where I'd call hook left, and your wingman goes hook right, and all of a sudden there's a conflict, and folks are in danger. People have to speak up and make it right away. So there's analogies between these small things that we're training. The operational impact, I want to keep that connection, keep those skills sharp. If we can do that, then I think a bright future for 538 and a bright future for the Air Force and Space Force.
Absolutely. I think something that we take pride in here at Det 538 is that we're not just producing one type of leader, one type of officer. we're not producing all pilots that are 400s. We have such a diverse group of individuals and cadets here, 100s through 400s, and that's freshmen through seniors for anyone who does not know. What does it mean to have such a diverse group of individuals here, major-wise, hometown-wise, and bring that to the Air Force where their message is we need more diversity in the Air Force and the Space Force?
So we just talked about an AS400 class today, and it's a theme that keeps coming back. We make better decisions when we bring varied perspectives towards the problem, right? I was just on the phone talking to a logistician about a problem with these VR devices, and she was talking about the supply chain and the long-term sustainment and some of the challenges associated with that. Those were areas that I'm not well-versed at considering, and by hearing her perspectives on it, it naturally improves the way that we tackle that problem. That's just one example of how bringing people from different majors, different backgrounds, different communities, different demographics, the more we do that, and the more we bring those teams together to solve some of the very challenging problems that I expect that our Air Force, our Space Force, and at the smaller level, our detachment will have to face. Those are the brilliant minds that are going to solve the problem. There's plenty of people who have similar perspectives to me. I value their inputs as well, because sometimes it can reaffirm a course of action. But what I really value on my leadership teams is the person who recognizes a problem that I failed to see and brings it up and communicates it. And sometimes that takes someone who looks different than me or who came from a different background than me. And I can't tell you how strongly I value that.
Great point, sir. I want to finish up here with 2 lightning questions for you. And we'll have a little fun with this, I think. So what was your favorite duty station and why?
Well, Det 538, right? I do. I love it here.
Right.
This is one time where I got my first choice assignment. My family's very happy in the Rochester area. I love the mission. I very much enjoy spending time with the cadets. I think it's great. I wouldn't be lying, though, also if I said I very much valued my operational experience at Kadena Air Base. Bringing my young family at the time, to Japan was amazing from a cultural perspective, from a mission standpoint. It was me living my dream from when I was a 9-year-old Boy Scout thinking, oh, wouldn't it, look at that fighter pilot, that's the coolest thing in the world to me at the time. And then all of a sudden I was that. So that's, those two are in close competition, but for very different reasons why I value those experiences.
Yes, sir. And Tyndall's a close third, right?
Well, Tyndall's where I trained to get up there. So I think you're going to have a great time out there. Panama City is a beautiful place. It was a stressful time for me, so I have some. I remember the stress of getting through the F-15 program when I went through there.
Absolutely. And sir, the last question that I have for you, you might have to think hard about this one because it's pretty tough. What's your favorite aircraft and why?
Every fighter pilot will tell you that the answer to most questions is it depends. It would be difficult for me to not think back about the F-15C and really enjoy the mission that it provides, right? I enjoyed my time in it, but now that I see F-15EX out there flying, which has taken that mission, amping it up with some new sensors and ability to carry more weapons, I think that's going to be a great airframe. It'd be difficult to look at the 5th generation platforms, the F-22, the F-35. They bring different capabilities that changes the way that we're able to fly our missions. So I think those are all F-15C and F-22, F-35. I think are probably my top picks.
Lieutenant Colonel Turner, thank you for sitting down with me today and discussing this. I think the listeners are going to have a lot of value in this conversation and can pull some points and apply it to their own lives. What closing remarks did you have for our listeners out there?
Well, first off, I want to thank you, Cadet Harkler, Cadet Newer. Thanks for working hard to make this happen. And I know that there's a lot of other cadets that are going into the production of this and the post-production. Thanks to all of the folks who are making that possible, who are reaching this new audience. For folks that are listening, hopefully this piques your interest, Hopefully this will bring you back and it will show you a little bit about what Detachment 538 is about, but on a bigger picture, what ROTC and maybe the Air Force is about. And hopefully it provides a channel for us to outreach to some new viewers, some new listeners, some new people who are interested in what we do, and gets them to come back for the next episode.
Absolutely. And, we're going to continue to aim high here and expand our outreach at Det 538. For those listening, stay tuned for more content and continue to stay focused. That's all we got.